Yesterday, the Claude team published a blog post that changed how I'm using Claude Code. It's one of those ideas that you never thought about, but once you hear it, it's obvious. I'm talking about using HTML instead of Markdown to produce richer, easier to share, and more readable Claude Code outputs. Hey, if you're new here, I'm Beto. In this channel, I teach you how to build applications using AI and how to be more productive with all these tools. If that sounds like your thing, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Here's a blog post from the Claude Code team. And the idea is simple. Instead of using Markdown, you can ask Claude to generate the output using HTML. Now, this is very interesting to me because the Claude Code team now uses HTML instead of Markdown internally. This is something that people from the outside, we definitely need to take advantage of. Okay, so what's the difference between HTML and Markdown? Well, with HTML, you get richer experiences. You can generate tables, you can add colors, you can have illustrations, code, interactions with toggles, sliders, and JavaScript code that adds extra functionality and makes it more dynamic. Canvas, coordinates, and images. Now at this point, it's obvious HTML can convey more richer information compared to Markdown. The number one advantage is visual clarity and ease of reading. So here you can see, of course, basically you're gonna get like a mini website in the response instead of just text. Another very important thing is that Claude has 1 million context window. That's the max. And you can just throw as much data as you want and have Claude generate an HTML that is going to present the data in a very clean way. Now, to see this in action, I want to show you a pretty cool example. This is my AI tattoo application. It's basically a nano banana wrapper that allows people to try on tattoos. And it's actually making money. It's making around $600 to $800 in monthly recurrent revenue. It's going up and down. But actually, recently I'm trying to use Apple Ads. Now, it's hard to actually map what's going on between how much money we are making and how much money we are spending in ads. Thankfully, they allow you to export this data into a spreadsheet. So what I'm gonna do here is create a new chat with Claude Code. This is the desktop application. And then I'm gonna bring the CSV file for the Apple Ads versus the revenue that we are making. Just gonna drag this in here. And then something important is that you have to actually ask for the HTML. Otherwise, Claude is going to generate Markdown for the response. So let's prompt it. I want to say something like, hey, can you help me make sense of this data? I'm trying Apple Ads, and one of the CSV is for how much we are spending on ads and versus how much money we are making from revenue cat. Revenue cat numbers don't reflect how much Apple is taking, which is 15%. We are a small company. Can you help me generate an HTML file that shows clearly, maybe using graphs or just a list, if we are actually making money or losing money with ads? All right, let's send that in. And after a moment, we actually get the HTML, which is basically telling me that the money is coming depending on the attribution. So if we decide to attribute everything that we are earning to ads, we're actually making $92. Otherwise, we're actually losing some money. This is an experiment, but most of the sales are actually coming from ads. So thankfully, we're kind of like breaking even. But this is the good thing about having an HTML file is that it will show you really nice graphs with nice colors. You can quickly see red numbers, the blue numbers, and see graphs like this one. You can see the days that we lost money versus the days that we made more money than we spent. These kind of graphs are really easy to understand just by looking at them. Just by looking at the green line, I know that we are doing okay, versus if that were below the red, which is how much am I spending, that would be concerning. And Claude went ahead and generated a cost per install over time. This is something that I really like, the day-to-day breakdown. If it's red, you lose money. If it's green, you make money. So this looks okay. Another great use case of HTML is to understand and reviewing code. Me as a developer, this is something that I really like. For example, I'm not very fluent on Swift, and I recently asked Claude to generate a modifier that adds basically a style to some views of my application. But I really want to understand how this works. So you can ask something like, generate an HTML file that explains how this code works. I'm not very familiar with modifiers. I'm not very familiar with Swift code. I'm more like a front-end React engineer. Okay, and then we can send that over and see what it comes up with. And here we have the rotating modifier. I think this is not working the way I was expecting. It has like a bug because it's rotating, but it's wrong. Now, if you don't like something about a specific part of the HTML, you can actually use this selector and then grab this in here, and that will select it in the chat, and then you can ask something about it, right? So this is not rotating correctly in the border. Can you check? Or you can use the pen to draw something like this. Add it to chat, yes, and then ask something about it. So that's a screenshot for Claude. Definitely easy to iterate. Maybe then you can also say, I would also prefer to just view the code with a popover explaining each line and what it does. And by the way, if you're wondering what I'm using for speech to text, it's actually called Aqua Voice. They are not sponsoring this video, but if you want to try it out, you can get 1 free month using my link. I'm gonna leave it in the description. It's really nice. So let's send this over. Okay, and Claude finished and it's now working. This is actually the modifier that I show you. This is the effect that the modifier adds to my inputs, and it looks really nice. It actually created the code as I expected it, and now I can actually click on each line and it's going to explain what it does. Okay, so definitely this is something really cool. This is amazing. I really like this. It's super simple and you can just take a look at the code and click on any response. Honestly, this is so much better than having a bunch of text, right? And this is basically how you do it. You just ask for the HTML. This is how you get started. Make an HTML file, make an HTML artifact. At the end of the day, these are just mental models that you need to learn. And speaking of mental models, in case you're trying to build your first application with Claude Code, I actually wrote a book, which is like a guide explaining you and showing you all the mental models that you need to know from idea to building, iterating, and shipping your application to the App Store. So if you're into that, make sure to check it out. I'm gonna leave the link in the description. Another great use case for HTML files is design and prototypes. You can of course use Claude Design, which is based on HTML. This is very interesting to know because HTML is incredibly expressive at design, even if your end surface is not HTML. For example, you can start prototyping with HTML and then just ask Claude to write the same style or whatever you have on screen in React or in Swift. You can also prototype interactions such as animations, actions, and then consider asking Claude to make the sliders, knobs, etc. This is a great idea, especially if you are building something real and you are really caring about the end user experience. One important thing to know here is that Markdown actually uses fewer tokens, but sometimes having an HTML that is more clear and you can scan quickly, even if it uses more tokens, it will prevent you from keep prompting. In the long run, you could actually save tokens and have a better output. So when do you use Markdown for now? They are saying that they are not using Markdown anymore. This is wild. Everyone now in the Claude Code team is using HTML for responses. I'm gonna definitely start using more HTML for my Claude Code outputs. Let me know in the comments if you're gonna be doing the same, and I would also like to hear your use cases. If you have an app idea that you want to ship to the App Store, check out my book, From Idea to App Store. The link is in the description. If you want to learn more about Claude, check out this other video. I'll see you there.